She was always a pure, innocent woman, marked by a life of loneliness. The man she took in, lost and hurt, was hiding more than just a dark past. He was a powerful millionaire, on the run from enemies, betrayals, and a web of dangers that could destroy her too. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. The mountains surrounding Pine Valley seemed to embrace the town in a protection that, over time, had transformed into a prison. Emma knew every curve of those hills, every shade of green that changed with the seasons, every sound that echoed between the ridges when the wind blew strong. At 27, she had spent her entire life in this place where everyone knew each other, where every step was observed, where every word was weighed on the invisible scale of social judgment. The Vista Lodge, a family property for 3 generations, had once been the pride of the town. In Emma's grandfather's time, important politicians stopped there during their travels through rural Virginia. The walls still held yellowed photographs of those glorious days when the establishment bustled with life and prosperity. Now, however, only lost travelers or salespeople looking for cheap lodging sought the simple rooms and home-cooked meals that Emma prepared with such care. That March morning, she was watering the begonias in the front garden when Mrs. Connie, the street's most gossipy neighbor, stopped in front of the rusty iron gate. "Emma, honey, don't you think it's past time you found yourself a husband? A pretty girl like you wasting your youth in this inn. My niece, who's your age, is already on her 3rd child." The comment pierced Emma's chest like a familiar splinter. She continued watering the flowers, pretending to focus entirely on the task. "I'm fine as I am, Mrs. Connie. The inn keeps me very busy." "Work doesn't replace companionship, child. And after your parents passed, you've been too alone in that big house. It's not natural." Emma smiled forcedly and waved goodbye, quickly entering the inn. The word natural echoed in her mind like a slap. Nothing in her life seemed natural by the town's standards. Single woman at 27, virgin by choice and circumstance, fully dedicated to work and the books she discreetly ordered from Richmond. In the kitchen, she prepared lunch for the week's only 2 guests, a fabric merchant and a retiree visiting relatives in the area. The silence of the large house weighed on her shoulders. Sometimes when she was alone like this, Emma allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to have someone to share meals with, conversations, the fears that haunted her in the early hours. But these thoughts always stumbled upon the painful memory of her 18 years. Mark, the mayor's son, had shown interest in her discreetly for months. Casual encounters in the square, conversations after Mass, until at a summer festival he kissed her behind the church. Someone saw them. Within hours the news spread through town like wildfire. His family denied any serious involvement. Hers remained silent, embarrassed. Emma became the talk of conversation circles, her reputation questioned, her purity put in doubt because of an innocent kiss. The experience marked her deeply. She learned that in the town where she was born, a woman had no right to make mistakes, to desire, to experiment. Her life should follow a predetermined script: courtship approved by the family, formal engagement, wedding in the town church, children, and submission. Any deviation from this path resulted in social condemnation. That's why, at 27, Emma had built walls around her heart. She worked from morning to night, taught Sunday school to children, participated in parish activities, kept the inn running with increasingly scarce resources. Her only escape valve were the novels she read secretly in her room, stories of brave women who defied conventions and lived impossible loves. That afternoon, while changing the bed linens in room 3, Emma stopped in front of the old mirror of the wardrobe. She observed her own reflection with a mixture of resignation and melancholy. Brown hair tied in a simple bun, floral dress that hid her body's curves, green eyes that no longer shone as they did in her youth. Sometimes she wondered if she had really chosen that life, or if she had simply surrendered to others' expectations. The sky began to darken prematurely, heavy clouds announcing a storm. Emma closed the inn's windows and lit some candles in case the electricity failed, a common routine in those late March days when the rains came with full force. In the main room, she organized the guest records in an already quite worn, leather-covered notebook. Each name there represented a story, a brief passage through her life. Merchants, transferred public servants, relatives visiting family, all left their mark on those yellowed pages. Emma wondered how many times she had been just another face in their routine, a silent woman who served breakfast and tidied rooms. Outside, the wind began to blow stronger, shaking the old trees in the yard. The inn groaned with its familiar noises, wood that cracked, tiles that trembled, doors that creaked. Sounds that had accompanied her since childhood and that night, seemed to carry a different restlessness. While preparing a simple soup for dinner, Emma let her mind wander to the novels she read. She always identified with the protagonists at the beginning of the stories, women imprisoned by circumstances, dreaming of freedom, waiting for something or someone to come transform their lives. But unlike them, Emma had given up waiting. She had made peace with her limited reality, even if that meant burying dreams and desires. The first heavy drops of rain hit against the kitchen window, gradually increasing until they became a deluge. It was the kind of storm that isolated the town, making roads impassable and forcing everyone to remain at home. Emma knew she probably wouldn't have new guests that night, not with that weather. The storm broke over Pine Valley with a fury Emma had never witnessed. Lightning cut the sky like luminous scars, and thunder echoed between the mountains in a rumble that made the entire inn tremble. The electricity failed shortly after 8 in the evening, leaving only candles to illuminate the shadowy corridors of the old house. Emma was finishing serving dinner to her 2 guests when desperate knocks on the main door made her stop in the middle of the room. They weren't ordinary knocks. There was urgency, almost desperation in that sound that cut through the deafening noise of the rain. She looked through the window, but the darkness and the curtain of water made it impossible to distinguish anything. Who could it be at this hour in this storm? She murmured to herself as she walked cautiously to the front door. The knocks repeated, more insistent. Emma held the doorknob firmly, hesitating. All the caution she had learned over the years warned her not to open the door to strangers on a night like that. But there was something in the cadence of those knocks that spoke of real urgency, of someone in an emergency situation. "Who is it?" she shouted, trying to make her voice overcome the noise of the storm. "Please, I need help. I have a child with me." The voice was masculine, hoarse, carrying a natural authority even in the desperate situation. Emma felt her heart accelerate. A child. That changed everything. Without hesitating further, she opened the door. The sight that greeted her was overwhelming. A tall man, completely soaked, held in his arms a boy who couldn't be more than 6 years old. Both were shivering. From cold. Clothes stuck to their bodies, hair dripping water incessantly. But it was the man's gaze that struck her like lightning. Dark, intense eyes that even in the vulnerability of the situation carried a magnetic force impossible to ignore. "Come in, for God's sake." Emma stepped away from the door, allowing them to enter the reception area, illuminated only by candles. The man hesitated for a moment, as if assessing the environment, before crossing the threshold. His movements, even carrying the child and fighting against evident exhaustion, had a natural elegance that contrasted with his simple, wet clothes. There was something about him that didn't fit, a posture, a way of occupying space that spoke of someone accustomed to command, to power. "Thank you," he said, his deep voice echoing in the inn's hall. "My car broke down on the road a few miles back. We've been walking for hours looking for shelter." Emma quickly closed the door and turned to them. The boy in the man's arms was clearly frightened, wide eyes glued to her face as if seeking security. She noticed small marks on the child's face, a faded bruise on his forehead, a scratch on his chin. "You're freezing. Come, I'll get towels and dry clothes." She gestured for them to follow her, taking some candles to light the way. "Do you have names?" "Victor," the man responded after an almost imperceptible pause. "And this is Ryan." His hand moved protectively over the boy's head. "Emma, this is the Vista Lodge." She led them to the nearest room, lighting more candles along the way. The environment came to life with the dancing light, revealing antique furniture and a simple but welcoming decoration. Victor observed everything attentively, his eyes scanning every detail as if memorizing the place. "Ryan has a fever," Victor said, touching the child's forehead with evident tenderness. "He needs to warm up soon." The genuine concern in his voice touched something deep in Emma. She approached and extended her arms. "May I?" she asked gently. Victor hesitated again, but the child's condition spoke louder. He placed Ryan in Emma's arms with extreme care. The boy immediately clung to her, small fingers closing on her blouse as if afraid of being abandoned again. "Hey, little one," Emma murmured in a soft voice, slightly rocking her body. "You're safe now. I'll take care of you." Ryan raised his eyes to her, eyes that were exact replicas of Victor's, dark and deep, but carrying a vulnerability that broke her heart. Emma felt something move inside her chest, a protective instinct that had long remained dormant. "I'll get dry clothes for you and prepare some hot tea," she said, without taking her eyes off the boy. "There are extra blankets in the closet. Victor, take off those wet clothes before you get sick too." When she left the room, Victor was alone for the first time in hours. He breathed deeply, trying to process what had happened. The desperate escape, the deserted road, the car breakdown just as the storm arrived. And now that woman. There was something in the way she looked at Ryan, in the naturalness with which she had welcomed him, that completely disarmed him. Victor took off his wet shirt and threw it over a chair, observing his reflection in the room's antique mirror. The marks on his own body told stories he preferred to forget, a recent scar on his shoulder, still visible bruises on his chest. He had fled from New York 3 days ago, taking only the essentials, and Ryan, after discovering that not even his own family was safe anymore. Emma returned to the room carrying a tray with steaming chamomile tea, dry clothes, and a wool blanket. The storm continued to rage outside, but within that candlelit space, a strange intimacy had settled. Victor had exchanged his wet shirt for a towel, revealing a defined torso marked by scars that told silent stories of violence. She pretended not to notice, focusing on Ryan, who was now lying on the large bed, still shivering under the blankets. "How are you feeling, little one?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the bed and offering a small cup of warm tea. Ryan observed her with those large, distrustful eyes before accepting the drink. His little hands wrapped around the cup as if it were a treasure, and he drank in cautious small sips. "He doesn't talk much," Victor said in a low voice, picking up the dry shirt she had brought. "He's been through difficult situations recently." Emma noticed the hesitation in his voice, the way he carefully chose each word. There were layers of meaning in everything he said, as if each sentence hid a greater truth that couldn't be revealed. "Children need time to process trauma," she responded softly, smoothing Ryan's hair. "When I was little and had nightmares, my grandmother would tell me stories. Works better than medicine sometimes." Victor observed her as he put on the shirt. There was a genuine gentleness in the way she interacted with Ryan, unhurried, without invasion. It wasn't the rehearsed gentleness of someone trying to impress, but something natural, instinctive. He wasn't used to this. In his world, all kindness had a price, all courtesy hid an agenda. "Do you have children?" he asked, surprising himself with his own curiosity. "No." The answer was simple, but Victor caught the shadow that passed through her green eyes. "Never married. Actually, never." She stopped abruptly, as if she had revealed more than she intended. An awkward silence settled between them, broken only by the noise of the rain and the small sounds Ryan made while drinking the tea. Victor wondered what story was hidden behind that incomplete confession. A woman like Emma, beautiful, caring, clearly intelligent, single in her 20s in a small town, that spoke of choices or circumstances that had forced her into isolation. "Ryan," Emma said, changing the subject, "how about if I told you a story while you finished that tea? I know one about a brave knight and a dragon that was actually just missing his family." The boy's eyes lit up for the first time since they had arrived. He nodded slightly, settling better against the pillows. As Emma began the narrative with a melodious voice, Victor sat in a nearby armchair, pretending to adjust his dry clothes, but actually observing that scene with growing fascination. The way she modulated her voice to bring the characters to life, how she delicately gestured to illustrate the story, how she completely captured Ryan's attention. It was impossible not to notice her beauty. Not an obvious or calculated beauty, but something more subtle and powerful. The candlelight danced in her brown hair, creating golden reflections. When she smiled at Ryan, her entire face transformed, revealing a luminosity that contrasted with the melancholy Victor had noticed in her eyes. And then, Emma continued, the knight discovered that the dragon was guarding that treasure because it was all that remained of the family he had lost. He wasn't evil, just very, very sad and lonely. Victor felt a tightness in his chest. There was something in the story that touched dangerously close to his own situation. He too was guarding a treasure, Ryan, that was all he had left of a family he had lost. And perhaps he too was behaving like a dragon, pushing everyone away out of fear, pain, and distrust. Ryan fell asleep before the end of the story, the empty cup slipping from his relaxed hands. Emma picked it up delicately and adjusted the blankets around. The boy with maternal care. He seems calmer, Victor whispered, approaching the bed to observe his son sleeping. Children are resilient, Emma responded in a low voice. They recover faster than adults, as long as they feel safe. And you? How did you learn to deal so well with children? She hesitated, organizing the tray to occupy herself with something. I teach at the town's community school, and I've always liked taking care of people. It's a calling, I think. Victor studied her in the silence that followed. There was more to that answer, he was sure, just as there was much more to him than he was revealing. Emma, he said her name for the first time, savoring the sound. Thank you for taking us in like this, without questions. Not everyone would do that. She faced him directly, and for a moment the intensity of that gaze left her breathless. There was gratitude there, yes, but also something deeper, a connection she couldn't explain, a magnetic attraction that went far beyond the physical. Anyone would do the same, she murmured, but she knew she was lying. She knew there was something special happening that night, something that transcended simple hospitality. No, Victor said, taking a step closer. Not just anyone. You are different. His proximity made her tremble slightly. Victor was tall, and she needed to raise her face to meet his eyes. The energy emanating from him was disturbing, a mixture of strength and vulnerability that confused and attracted her at the same time. I should let you rest, she whispered, but didn't move. You should, he agreed, but also didn't step away. Cher's moment extended between them, charged with a tension that neither knew how to name. Outside, the storm continued, but inside that room something much more powerful and dangerous was beginning to form. Morning came with a deceptive calm. The storm had passed, leaving only puddles scattered along the cobblestone streets and clean air carrying the smell of wet earth. Emma woke early as always, but with a different restlessness hammering in her chest. The events of the previous night seemed like a vivid dream, the mysterious man, the frightened boy, that moment of tension that had remained suspended between her and Victor like a thread about to break. She prepared strong coffee in the kitchen, trying to organize her thoughts. There was something about Victor that deeply disturbed her. Not just the obvious physical attraction, though that was undeniable, but the sense that he carried secrets too heavy for one person alone. The way he held Ryan, as if the boy were simultaneously his greatest treasure and his greatest vulnerability. The scars on his body, speaking of recent violence, the manner in which he carefully chose each word, as if a careless phrase could reveal more than he could allow. When she went upstairs to check on them, she found Victor already awake, sitting in a chair beside the bed where Ryan still slept deeply. He wore the dry clothes she had lent him, simple jeans and a cotton shirt, but even so maintained that natural elegance that had impressed her the previous night. Good morning, she whispered, leaving a steaming cup of coffee on the bedside. Table? Good morning, thank you. Victor took the cup with both hands, inhaling the strong aroma. Did you sleep well? The simple question carried an intimacy that made her blush slightly. It was as if they were old acquaintances sharing an ordinary morning, not strangers who had met on a stormy night. Yes, and you? Ryan seems better. The fever broke during the night. He's exhausted but out of danger. Victor observed his son with evident tenderness. You have a way with children. He doesn't trust people easily, but yesterday, he gave himself completely to your care. He's a special boy, very intelligent in his eyes, even when scared. Victor hesitated before responding, as if struggling with some internal decision. Ryan isn't technically my son. Biologically, I mean. I adopted him 2 years ago when his mother... His voice faltered for a moment. When she died. Emma felt her heart tighten. There was genuine pain in that confession, layers of grief and responsibility. That explained the intensity of the connection between them. I'm very sorry, it must have been difficult for both of you. Caroline she was special, very young, very brave. When she found out she was sick, the only thing that worried her was Ryan's future. She made me promise I would care for him as if he were my own blood. The way he spoke of Caroline revealed that he had deeply loved that woman. Emma felt a strange pang of something that dangerously resembled jealousy, which surprised and embarrassed her at the same time. You honor the promise you made to her. Anyone can see how much you love each other. Victor studied her for a long moment, as if trying to decipher something in her expression. And you, Emma? Why is a woman like you alone in a small town taking care of an inn? There's a story there that you're not telling. The question caught her off guard. Emma rose abruptly, pretending to adjust the pillows on the bed. There isn't much to tell. I was born here. My parents died a few years ago. I inherited the inn. It's a simple life. Simple, Victor repeated, not convinced. And you never wanted something more? Never dreamed of leaving this place? Dreams are luxuries that not everyone can afford to have. The bitterness in her voice surprised him. Victor stood up and approached, stopping just inches away. Emma could feel the heat emanating from his body, the masculine scent mixed with the soap she herself had provided. What kind of dream could be so dangerous? She faced him, and for a moment thought about telling everything. The humiliating episode with Mark, the town's judgment, the years of self-imposed solitude. But something in the intensity of his gaze alerted her to the fact that Victor was also hiding much greater truths. And you? She returned the question. What kind of life are you and Ryan running from? The change in his expression was immediate. His features hardened. An invisible wall rose between them. Who said we're running? Nobody needs to say it. It's written in every move you make, every look you cast at the window, every time Ryan wakes up frightened during the night. You're running from something. Victor stepped away, walking to the window that overlooked the main street. Below, the town's peaceful life had already resumed its normal rhythm. Some people passed carrying market bags. Children played in puddles left by the rain. Mrs. Connie swept the sidewalk in front of her house with energetic movements. Sometimes, running is the only way to protect those we love, he finally said without turning around. And sometimes hiding the truth hurts more than any lie could hurt. He turned to her, surprised by the perspicacity of her observation. You speak like someone who knows the weight of secrets. I know the weight of many things. At that moment, Ryan stirred in the bed, moaning softly. Both immediately turned. To him, the tension of the previous moment dissolving in their shared concern. The boy slowly opened his eyes, disoriented. Victor? His voice was hoarse from sleep. I'm here, champion. How are you feeling? Ryan sat up slowly, looking around until he found Emma. A shy smile appeared on his face. The story lady, he said, the first words Emma had heard him pronounce clearly. Good morning, Ryan. Want some breakfast? I have fresh cinnamon rolls. The sake too. Boy nodded enthusiastically, and Emma smiled, extending her hand to him. Ryan hesitated only a second before accepting it, jumping out of bed with renewed energy. As the three went down to the kitchen, Victor couldn't stop observing the natural interaction between Emma and Ryan. There was something there that moved, and terrified him at the same time. They looked like a family, and this illusion of normality was more dangerous than any physical threat that might be pursuing them. Outside, Mrs. Connie stopped sweeping the sidewalk and discreetly observed the three silhouettes passing by the kitchen window. A man, a woman, a child. In her head, rumors were already beginning to form. The next 3 days passed like in a bubble suspended in time. Victor and Ryan remained at the inn while he claimed to be waiting for parts to fix the car, but Emma perceived there was something deeper keeping them there. Ryan flourished under her care in a way that touched her heart. He helped in the kitchen, standing on a stool to reach utensils, asked curious questions about everything, laughed for the first time when she taught him to make biscuits. Victor, in turn, had become a constant and disturbing presence. He helped with small repairs around the inn, fixed the bathroom faucet that had been dripping for months, reorganized the pantry shelves with an efficiency that spoke of someone accustomed to command. But it was in moments of silence that the tension between them became almost palpable. When their eyes met during meals, when their hands accidentally touched while picking something up, when they were alone in the kitchen while Ryan played. In the yard. On the morning of the fourth day, Emma went to Mrs. Lucy's market to buy ingredients for lunch. The reception she found was quite different from the usual rural courtesy. "Emma," Mrs. Lucy said with a forced smile, weighing tomatoes with brusquer movements than normal, "I heard you have special guests at the inn." "Just a father and son. Their car broke down on the road during the storm. How lucky for them to find your inn, isn't it?" The comment came from Mrs. Zelda, who appeared from nowhere between the cleaning product shelves. "And how convenient that the car is taking so long to be fixed." Emma felt the blood rush to her face. She knew that tone all too well, that way of transforming an innocent situation into something sordid through insinuations. "The mechanic in Riverdale is waiting for parts to arrive from Richmond," she responded with the firmest voice she could muster. Of course," Mrs. Lucy nodded exaggeratedly. "And it's natural for a single woman to want to help a family in difficulties, although some people might misinterpret, right?" "Misinterpret what, exactly?" "Well, dear," Mrs. Zelda approached, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "A young, handsome man from what they've been saying. Alone with you in that big inn, people talk, you know how it is." Emma picked up the shopping bag with hands trembling from contained anger. "People always talk, especially when they don't have anything more interesting in their own lives to occupy themselves with." She left the market with her face burning with indignation and humiliation. It was the episode with Mark repeating itself, but this time the implications were much worse. It was no longer a single girl kissing the mayor's son. It was a 27-year-old woman getting involved with a stranger. In the heads of the town gossips, this was practically a sexual scandal. When she arrived at the inn, she found Victor in the yard teaching Ryan to play soccer with an improvised ball made of old socks. The scene was so domestic, so naturally familiar, that for a moment she completely forgot the malicious comments she had just heard. "Emma!" Ryan ran to her, hugging her legs. "Victor taught me to kick the ball really hard. I saw, champion. You're becoming a star player." She smoothed the boy's hair, but her eyes met Victor's above his head. Victor immediately perceived that something was wrong. There was tension in Emma's posture, a rigidity that wasn't there when she had left for the market. "Ryan, how about getting a glass of water in the kitchen? The sun is strong today." The boy promptly obeyed, running into the house. Victor approached Emma, studying her altered expression. "What happened?" "Nothing, just small complications of small-town life." "Emma." He said her name with a soft authority that made her raise her eyes to him. "Tell me." "People are talking. About you being here. About us." She vaguely gestured between the two. "They're insinuating things." Victor's expression hardened. "What kind of things?" "The kind of thing they always insinuate when a single woman associates with a man, especially a woman with my reputation." "Your reputation?" Emma hesitated, but something in the intensity of his gaze made her continue. "When I was 18, I was involved in a small scandal. A boy from town kissed me at a festival. Someone saw, spread the story as if it were something much more serious. My family was embarrassed, his denied everything, and I became the subject of gossip circles for months. Since then, anything I do is viewed with suspicion." Victor felt a dull anger grow in his chest. The idea that those petty people had tortured Emma for something so innocent, that they had planted in her this insecurity that made her hide from her own desire. "And you believe what they say?" I know there's nothing wrong with what we're doing, but that doesn't matter. In places like this, appearance is more important than truth. Victor took a step toward her, deliberately invading her personal space. And what if it wasn't just to appearance? The question hit her like lightning. Emma felt her heart race, her breathing become irregular. What do you mean? What if I told you that for 3 nights I've been waking up thinking of you? That I watch how you smile at Ryan and imagine what it would be like if we were actually a family? The words came out before he could stop them. Victor surprised himself with his own honesty, with the vulnerability he was exposing. Emma stared at him, completely speechless. She had dreamed of something like this during all those lonely years, but now that it was happening, it seemed too unreal to be true. Victor, I know it's crazy. I know we've only known each other for a few days, that there are things about me you don't know. He stopped, struggling with the need to tell the truth and the instinct to protect her. But I've never felt anything like this before, not even with Caroline. The confession shook her. Victor had deeply loved Ryan's mother, that was clear. If he was saying he felt something different for her. We need to be careful, she whispered. For Ryan, for me, for you. People in this town can be cruel when they want to be. Then let them talk, Victor said, delicately reaching for her face with one hand. Let them say what they want, because for the first time in years, Emma, I don't want to run from anywhere. His touch sent waves of heat throughout her body. Emma closed, her eyes allowing herself for the first time in almost a decade to feel what it was like to be desired, to be wanted by a man. But when she opened her eyes again, she saw Mrs. Carney on the sidewalk in front, looking directly at them over the low fence, with an expression that mixed scandal and malicious satisfaction. The woman waved exaggeratedly before walking away, clearly eager to share what she had just witnessed. Now they'll really have something to talk about, Emma murmured, moving away from Victor's touch with reluctance. The news spread through town with the speed of a wildfire in dry straw. Mrs. Connie wasted no time. Before lunch, half of Pine Valley already knew that Emma was canoodling with the mysterious guest in the inn's yard. Each person who retold the story added their own details, transforming Victor's delicate touch on her face into a scene of unbridled passion. Emma felt the stares wherever she went. At the bakery, conversation ceased when she entered. At the pharmacy, whispers followed her through the corridors between the shelves. Even the children at the community school seemed different, as if they had heard adults commenting about Miss Emma at home. On Thursday afternoon, Father Anthony appeared at the inn. He was a 60-year-old man, grey hair, and a habitually kind expression that now carried evident concern. "Emma, my child, may we talk?" She received him in the main room, serving coffee in porcelain cups that had belonged to her grandmother. Victor had taken Ryan for a walk through the town centre, an attempt to give the boy some normalcy after days confined to the inn. "Father, I imagine I know why you're here." "People are talking, Emma. A lot." He sighed heavily. "I know you've always been a girl of character, but the situation is delicate." "Delicate how?" "A man no one knows, living under your roof for a week. Without a wife, with a child, no one knows where he came from. Tongues are loose, and you know how this can harm a woman." Emma felt the familiar burning of injustice rise in her chest. And if it were an entire family, a woman, a husband, and children, no one would question anything. "But that's not the case, is it?" The priest leaned forward. "Emma, I'm not here to judge you, I'm concerned about you. This town can be merciless with women who get involved in questionable situations." "Questionable situations," she repeated, the words as if they were poisonous. "Offering shelter to a sick child and his father is questionable." "Father," Father Anthony raised his eyebrows. "Some people are saying they don't even look alike. That maybe the story isn't quite what it seems." The insinuation left her speechless. Now they were even questioning the relationship between Victor and Ryan, creating increasingly sordid theories to explain their presence there. "Father, with all due respect, the people of this town have too much imagination and too little life of their own. He sighed again, rising to leave. Just be careful, my child, very careful. When Victor and Ryan returned from their walk, they found Emma in the kitchen preparing dinner with mechanical movements and a somber expression. Ryan ran to her, excited to tell her about the square, the church, the birds he had seen, but Victor immediately noticed the change in her mood. "Ryan, how about taking a bath before dinner?" he suggested. "You're all sweaty from the walk." The boy obeyed without questioning, going up the stairs with energy. Victor closed the kitchen door and approached Emma. "What happened?" "The priest was here. Apparently the entire town is convinced we're lovers, and that Ryan was kidnapped or something like that." Victor felt his muscles tense. There was a reason why he avoided staying too long in the same place, and it wasn't just because of the enemies pursuing him. It was also because of situations like this, when excessive attention began to create problems for innocent people. "Emma, maybe it would be better if we left." "No." The response was immediate and vehement. "I won't let them drive me out of my own home again." Again. She stopped chopping onions and faced him. "After the episode with Mark, I seriously thought about leaving. I was so embarrassed, so tired of the looks and comments. But my parents convinced me to stay. They said that running would be admitting guilt for something I didn't do, and now they want me to hide again for sheltering you." Victor approached, stopping behind her. He could feel the tension radiating from her body, the anger and frustration consuming her. "You don't have to hide from anything, but you also don't need to suffer because of us." "And what if I want to suffer?" She turned to face him, her eyes shining with a determination he hadn't seen before. "What if for the first time in my life I want to do exactly what they're accusing me of doing?" The question hung between them like a confession. Victor felt the air become dense, charged with an electricity that had been accumulating for days. "Emma, you said you think of me at night. Said you imagine what it would be like if we were a family." She took a step toward him. "I think about it too. I lie awake, imagining what it would be like to be touched by you, to be kissed, to be truly desired." The words came out in an urgent whisper, as if she needed to say them before courage fled. Victor stood still, fighting against all the instincts that screamed for him to take her in his arms. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying. I'm 27, Victor. I've never been truly kissed, never felt what other women feel, and maybe I'll never have another chance, because after you leave I'll go back to being the spinster of the inn, who takes care of guests and teaches Sunday school. You'll find someone who deserves you, who can give you a normal life." "I don't want normal." The intensity in her voice surprised him. "So I want you, here now before it's too late." Victor lost the battle against self-control. In 2 steps he eliminated the distance between them, pressing Emma against the kitchen counter. His hands found her face, fingers burying themselves in her brown hair. "Emma, if I kiss you now, there's no going back. You understand that?" "I'm counting on it." The kiss, when it finally happened, was everything she had imagined and much more. Victor kissed her with a desperate hunger, as if she were the air he needed to breathe. Emma melted against his body, discovering sensations she didn't even know existed. Her hands clutched his shirt, pulling him closer, wanting to eliminate any space between them. When they separated, both were breathless. Victor rested his forehead on hers, trying to regain control. "There," Emma whispered, her lips swollen and eyes shining. "Now, they really have a reason to talk." "Emma, don't regret it. Please don't regret it." "Impossible," he murmured, kissing her again, more gently this time. "Impossible to regret something I've been dreaming about for a week." Neither of them noticed the shadow that quickly passed by the kitchen window, nor the hurried steps that moved away down the street. Mrs. Connie had returned to deliver the order she had forgotten in the morning, and now had material for an entire week of gossip. Upstairs, Ryan finished his bath and came down for dinner, finding Victor and Emma still embracing in the kitchen. He smiled with the innocence of a child who simply sees 2 people He likes showing affection for each other. Are you going to get married? He asked with absolute naturalness. The question separated them like an electric shock, but before either could respond, Victor's cell phone rang. The number on the screen made him turn pale instantly. I need to answer this, he said, quickly leaving the kitchen. Emma was left alone with Ryan, her heart still racing from the kiss and the boy's innocent question. Marriage. The word echoed in her mind as a possibility both wonderful and terrifying. From the yard came fragments of Victor's tense conversation. Found the trail. Not safe. We need to leave tonight. Reality fell on her like a cold bucket of water. Whatever Victor's past was, it was finally catching up to them. Victor returned to the kitchen 20 minutes later, his face tense and his shoulders bearing a weight that Emma hadn't seen since the first night. Ryan played with beans on his plate, oblivious to the change in atmosphere, but she immediately perceived that something fundamental had changed. We need to talk, he said in a low voice. Alone. Emma asked Ryan to watch cartoons in the living room and led Victor to the small office at the back of the inn where her father used to do the accounting. The cramped environment, with its shelves full of dusty books and a single window overlooking the yard, offered the privacy they needed. Victor, you're scaring me. He turned to her, and Emma saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before, at real visceral fear. My real name is Victor Anderson Sullivan. I'm heir to Sullivan Enterprises, one of the country's largest business groups. Construction, mining, agribusiness, maybe you've heard of it. Emma felt her legs weaken. Sullivan Enterprises was a name that appeared in newspapers regularly, always associated with astronomical figures and political scandals. That's impossible. I know how it sounds. But 6 months ago I discovered that my own brother Richard was using the company to launder money for drug cartels. When I tried to expose the truth, he fabricated evidence that I was responsible for the crimes. He turned me into the perfect scapegoat. Victor began to pace around the small space like a caged animal. Caroline worked in the company's accounting department. She was the one who first discovered the irregularities and came to me. That's why they killed her, Emma. It wasn't cancer. It was radiation poisoning, slow, painful, planned to look like a natural disease. The words hit Emma like physical punches. The world she knew, simple, predictable, safe, was being shattered piece by piece. And Ryan. Ryan is Caroline's son. When she realized she was being murdered, she begged me to protect him. I legally adopted the boy 3 days before she died, to ensure he would stay with me and not with her family, who are also involved in the scheme. Emma leaned on the desk, trying to process the enormity of what she was hearing. That's why you're running. That's why you can't stay in one place for too long. They have unlimited resources, politicians bought off, police on the payroll, professional assassins. During these months, I've managed to gather enough evidence to prove my innocence and incriminate Richard, but I need to deliver it to the right people, at the right time. And the phone call? Victor stopped pacing and faced her. They found us. Someone recognized me in town, or maybe they tracked some signal. I don't know, but I know we have at most a few hours before they get here. A few hours, she repeated, feeling panic rise in her throat. Victor, what are we going to do? We aren't going to do anything. Ryan and I are leaving now tonight. I'll grab my backpack, some supplies, and we'll go out through the back road. And leave me here? Leave me after... She touched her own lips, still feeling the ghost of their kiss. Victor approached and held her face between his hands. Emma, listen to me. These people don't hesitate to eliminate anyone who stands in their way. They've already killed Caroline. They've already tried to kill me 3 times. If they know you mean something to me, they'll use you against me or worse. So all of this was a lie. Everything you said about... Nothing was a lie. The intensity of his voice made her step back. Every word I said about you, about us, is true. That's precisely why I need to leave. Because you're the first good thing that's happened in my life in years, and I won't let them destroy you too. Tears began to stream down Emma's face. A week ago, her biggest concern was the town rumors about her being single. Now she was in love with a man hunted by assassins. There's another way, there has to be. There isn't, Victor kissed her on the forehead, a goodbye kiss. In a few weeks, when all this is over, if I can clear my name. If you can, she interrupted, and if you can't, and if they catch you. He didn't answer, because they both knew the answer. A noise in the main room made them freeze. Heavy footsteps, more than one person. Ryan appeared at the office door, his eyes wide with fear. Victor, there are strange men here. They asked about you. Victor's blood ran cold. They had arrived faster than he expected. Through the office window, he saw two dark figures circling the house, a coordinated operation. Emma, is there a way out through the back? Yes, through the kitchen, but... Take Ryan, leave through the back, go to a neighbor's house. Don't come back here tonight. And you? I'll try to buy time, maybe create a distraction. Victor, no, let's all go together. He grabbed her by the shoulders, forcing her to face him. Emma, Ryan needs you now. If something happens to me, promise you'll take care of him, promise. Before she could respond, the front door was broken down with a crash. Harsh voices echoed through the inn, ordering everyone to show themselves. Victor pushed Ryan into Emma's arms. Go, now! Emma grabbed Ryan and ran to the kitchen, her maternal instincts speaking louder than fear. They managed to exit through the back door just as they heard the first gunshot inside. Ryan began to cry, and she covered him with her own body, running across the yard toward Mrs. Connie's house. Ironically, the gossipy neighbor had become her only option for safety. Behind them, more shots echoed through the silent night of Pine Valley. Emma knocked desperately on Mrs. Connie's door, Ryan trembling in her arms. Mrs. Connie, please, open up! It's an emergency! The door opened, revealing the woman in a bathrobe and curlers, her eyes bulging from their sockets when she saw Emma with the crying child. Emma! What? Please, let us in. There are armed men at the inn. I need to call the police. Mrs. Connie pulled them inside without asking more questions. While Emma desperately dialed the sheriff's office, Ryan clung to her waist, repeating only one word between sobs. Victor, Victor, Victor. Outside, silence had returned to the street, a silence that was even more terrifying than the gunshots. Emma looked through the window of Mrs. Connie's living room and saw that the lights of the inn were off. There were no signs of Victor. The police arrived 40 minutes later, an eternity during which Emma held Ryan in her lap, whispering words of comfort that she herself didn't believe. The boy had stopped crying but kept his eyes fixed on the window, as if expecting to see Victor appear at any moment. Mrs. Connie prepared sweet tea and blankets, her gossipy nature temporarily overcome by the urgency of the situation. My God, Emma, she murmured for the 10th time. I never imagined something like this could happen here in Pine Valley. Armed men, gunshots. It seems like something from a movie. When the officers finally invaded the inn, they found evident signs of struggle. Overturned furniture, broken glass, bloodstains on the main room floor. But there were no bodies, neither Victor's nor the attackers, as if everyone had simply disappeared into the darkness of the mountain night. Sheriff Caldwell, a 50-year-old man who had spent his entire career dealing with petty thefts and bar fights, was visibly uncomfortable with the magnitude of the situation. Miss Emma, I need you to tell me everything from the beginning. These men who were staying with you, did you know who they really were? Emma looked at Ryan, who had finally fallen asleep in her arms, physically and emotionally exhausted. Can we speak privately? The child has already been through enough trauma. They moved to Mrs. Connie's kitchen, where Emma told an edited version of the truth. Victor was a businessman being pursued by criminal former associates. Ryan was his adopted son. They had sought refuge at the inn, but were found. And you developed feelings for this man? The question, asked with the typical moralizing tone of small towns, made Emma raise her chin with dignity. Yes, I did, and I'm not ashamed of it. The sheriff noted something in his notebook, clearly uncomfortable with her frankness. We'll need to contact authorities in Richmond, maybe even Washington, if this is indeed related to organized crime. And in the meantime, what happens to Ryan? Well, technically he should go to a shelter until we find relatives, or no. The word came out with a force that surprised everyone, including Emma herself. "He stays with me." "Ma'am, you don't have legal authority." "Then give me that authority. Do whatever is necessary, but Ryan isn't going to any shelter. He's already lost his mother, perhaps lost Victor. I won't let him lose the only stability he has left." The determination in her voice echoed through the small kitchen. Mrs. Connie observed her with an expression of surprise, as if seeing Emma for the first time. The timid, submissive woman she knew had disappeared, replaced by someone fierce and protective. The next 3 days were a blur of interrogations, official phone calls, and national media that discovered the story and descended upon Pine Valley, like an invasion. Reporters camped in the main square, transforming the quiet town into a media circus. Billionaire heir disappears in small town. Forbidden romance ends in shootout. Orphaned child awaits news of adoptive father. The headlines multiplied, each more sensationalist than the last. Emma locked herself in the inn with Ryan, refusing to give interviews or make statements. The FBI had taken over the case, installing communication equipment and transforming her dining room into an improvised operations center. Ryan had regressed emotionally, returning to having nightmares and refusing to be away from Emma for more than a few minutes. She slept in the same bed as him, waking whenever the boy screamed during bad dreams. In moments of wakefulness, Ryan always asked the same question: "Is Victor coming back?" And Emma always gave the same answer: "I don't know, my love, but if he can come back, he will. And meanwhile, you have me." On the 4th night, when she finally managed to put Ryan to sleep, Emma allowed herself to break down. Sitting in the room where Victor had stayed, wrapped in the blanket that still carried his scent, she cried all the tears she had held back during those terrible days. She cried for the simple life she had lost, for the love that may have lasted only a week, for the traumatized child who now completely depended on her. But mainly, she cried because for the first time in her life, she had felt what it was like to love someone with every fiber of her being, and that had been brutally and suddenly torn from her. "I don't know how to do this alone," she whispered to the empty room. "I don't know how to be a mother. I don't know how to protect him. I don't even know if you're alive or dead. I need you, Victor. Ryan needs you." A soft knock on the door interrupted her. It was the FBI agent, Morgan, a serious 40-year-old man who had become her official contact with the authorities. "Ms. Emma, I'm sorry to disturb you so late, but we've received information you need to know." Her heart raced. "Did you find Victor?" "Not exactly. But we intercepted a conversation between members of the criminal organization. They're looking for him too. Apparently, Victor managed to escape the confrontation, but he's wounded." "Wounded how?" "We don't know the details, but the important thing is that he's alive. At least he was a few hours ago." Emma felt her legs weaken with relief. "And now? What happens now?" "We continue searching. But Miss Emma, there's something else. During the search of the inn, we found this." He handed her a sealed envelope with her name written in Victor's handwriting. It was hidden behind a drawer in the room where he stayed. It seems he knew something might happen. With trembling hands, Emma opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and something that made her catch her breath, a small golden key and a paper with geographic coordinates. The letter said only, "Emma, if something happens to me, this key opens a safe deposit box at the First National Bank of Richmond. Inside is all the evidence I need to clear my name and protect Ryan. The coordinates lead to the location where I've hidden backup copies. I trust only you. Love Ryan as I love you both. V." Emma looked at Agent Morgan, a new determination born. Fear in her eyes. How long would it take to get to Richmond? "About 4 hours by car." "Why?" "Because we're going to end this once and for all." The trip to Richmond was one of the most intense experiences of Emma's life. Ryan slept in the back seat of the official car, exhausted by the last days of tension, while she obsessively studied the documents that the FBI had copied before allowing her to access the safe deposit box. Financial spreadsheets, recorded conversations, photographs of secret meetings, suspicious bank transfers. a mountain of evidence that painted a devastating portrait of corruption within Sullivan Enterprises. Agent Morgan drove in silence, occasionally, checking his cell phone for updates on the operation being simultaneously mounted in New York. The FBI had decided to use Victor's evidence to trigger a national operation against the money laundering network, but they needed to find him alive so he could testify and have his charges dropped. "Ms. Emma," Morgan said as they entered the limits of the Virginia capital, "I want you to know that this is extremely dangerous. Richard Sullivan has powerful connections, politicians, judges, businessmen. When this evidence comes to light, he'll fight like a cornered animal. He's already killed Ryan's mother. He's already tried to kill Victor. What else can he do to us? Much more than you can imagine." The First National Bank was an imposing building in the city center, all glass and concrete reflecting the afternoon sun. Emma had never entered. Such an intimidating institution, but the urgency of the situation and the responsibility she felt for Ryan pushed her forward. Victor's key opened a small safe deposit box that contained flash drives, original documents, and an additional letter directed to the authorities, detailing exactly how to proceed with the accusations. When they left the bank, Morgan's phone rang. The conversation was brief, but Emma saw his expression change dramatically. "What is it?" "We found Victor. He's in an underground hospital in the south side of New York. He was shot in the shoulder and leg, but he's conscious and stable." Emma felt the world spin. Victor was alive, wounded but alive. "Can I see him?" "It's not safe yet." Richard Sullivan discovered that the evidence has been accessed and is mobilizing all the resources he has. There are arrest warrants being issued for him and 15 people in the organization, but he's still free and dangerous. They returned to a hotel near the airport, where Emma would spend the night with Ryan before deciding the next steps. The boy had awakened during the return trip and was clearly feeling the tension of the adults around him. "Emma, is Victor okay?" he asked while she helped him bathe. "He's injured, but he'll be fine. The doctors are taking care of him." "When will we see him?" The simple question made her realize that Ryan naturally assumed they were a unit, that wherever Victor was, they would be together. The idea of explaining to a 6-year-old the legal complexities and dangers involved was almost impossible. "Soon, my love, very soon." That night, while Ryan finally slept peacefully for the first time in a week, Emma received a call that changed everything. "Emma." The voice on the other end of the line was weak, hoarse, but unmistakably his. "Victor." She began to cry before she could even say anything else. "Are you okay? How did you get a phone? Where?" "Emma, listen to me carefully. I don't have much time. Richard discovered that you have the evidence. He's going to try to get to you to use you as a bargaining chip. I don't care. I just want you to be okay. I'll be okay. But I need you. To be strong now, stronger than you've ever been. Tomorrow morning, you and Ryan will meet with the federal prosecutor in Washington. You'll personally deliver all the evidence and tell everything you know." "And you?" "I'll be there. The doctors said I can travel if necessary, and it is necessary. I need to testify personally. Victor, I love you." The words came out before she could stop them. On the other end of the line, a silence that lasted an eternity. "Emma, you don't need to say anything. I just needed you to know. Needed you to know that these have been the most important days of my life, even with all the fear and all the pain." "I love you too," he finally said. "More than I thought it was possible to love someone. And I love Ryan as if he were my own blood. You are my family now, the only family that matters to me. Then let's fight for it. Let's fight for our family. We will. Emma, there's something I need to tell you before tomorrow. Caroline and I, we were never a couple. She was a lesbian. She was dating a wonderful woman named Julia. I was just the friend who agreed to help her protect Ryan when we discovered she was being poisoned. The relationship story was invented to explain why I adopted the boy." The revelation hit her like a wave of relief mixed with surprise. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I wanted you to know that my feelings for you are completely unique. I've never romantically loved anyone before you, Emma. You were the first, and you'll be the last." Tears flowed freely down her face. "We'll make it, Victor. We'll make it because we have to make it. We will, and when this is over, I'm going to propose to you properly, with a ring, with flowers, with all the ceremony you deserve. I'll say yes." "I know," he laughed softly. "Ryan already gave me permission." When they hung up, Emma looked at Ryan sleeping and felt a new strength being born inside her. For the first time in her life, she had something worth fighting for completely. A family to protect, a love to preserve, a future to conquer. The next day, she would be face to face with some of the country's most powerful and dangerous men. But she was no longer afraid. Love had transformed her from a woman who fled from her own desires into a warrior who would face any battle to protect her family. And this would be the most important battle of their lives. The Department of Justice. In Washington was a completely different world from anything Emma knew. Marbled corridors, armed security guards, lawyers in suits circulating with stacks of documents. She held Ryan's hand firmly, who wore his best clothes, a small dress shirt. She had bought the previous day and observed everything with the wide eyes of childlike curiosity. "Nervous?" asked Agent Morgan, who accompanied them along with 2 other federal agents. "Terrified," Emma admitted, but determined. When the elevator doors opened on the 12th floor, the first face Emma saw was Victor's. He was in a temporary wheelchair. Because of the wounds in his leg, his left arm in a sling, but alive, present, real. His eyes found hers in the same instant, and the world around simply disappeared. "Victor!" Ryan released Emma's hand and ran down the corridor, throwing himself into his adoptive father's arms with the full force of a child who had spent a week thinking he had lost him forever. Victor embraced him with his right arm, repeatedly kissing the top of the boy's head, whispering words of relief and love. Emma approached more slowly, still not completely believing that he was there, whole, safe. "Hi," he said simply when she stopped in front of him. "Hi," she responded, delicately touching his face as if wanting to make sure it wasn't a dream. "I missed you," Victor murmured. "Me too." The moment was interrupted by the arrival of the federal prosecutor, Dr. Hamilton Ferreira, a tall, imposing man who greeted everyone with professional seriousness. They were led to a meeting room where, for the next 3 hours, Victor meticulously detailed every crime he had discovered, every piece of evidence he had collected, every person involved in the money laundering scheme. Emma completed the testimony by telling about their arrival at the inn, the attack by the gunman, everything she had observed and experienced. Ryan, despite his young age, managed to describe some important details about the people who frequented his house before they fled with Victor. "With this evidence and these testimonies," Dr. Ferreira finally said, "we can guarantee the arrest of Richard Sullivan and at least 15 people from his organization. Additionally, Mr. Sullivan, all charges against you will be officially dropped within 48 hours. "And our safety?" Emma asked. "Richard is still free." "Not for long. At this exact moment, simultaneous operations are being launched in New York, Los Angeles, and Richmond. Richard Sullivan is being arrested now." As if theatrical, the prosecutor's phone rang at that instant. He answered, listened for a few seconds, and hung up with a smile. "Arrested. Richard Sullivan and his main accomplices are in federal custody." Emma felt her legs weaken with relief. Victor extended his right hand to her, intertwining their fingers tightly. "It's over," he whispered. "It's really over." 2 weeks later, they were back in Pine Valley, but the town that received them was very different from the one they had left. The story of the inn romance had spread nationally, transforming Emma into a kind of romantic heroine. Journalists continued to appear sporadically, but now it was to tell the final version of the story, the love that triumphed over violence, the simple woman who helped bring down a billion-dollar criminal scheme. The town gossips, including Mrs. Connie, completely changed their tone. Now Emma was a source of local pride, and her courage was cited as an example for the daughters and granddaughters of the entire region. "I never doubted Emma," Mrs. Connie would say to whoever would listen, conveniently forgetting all the malicious insinuations she had spread weeks before. Victor had decided to use part of his fortune, now officially returned to him, to transform the inn into a support center for women and children in vulnerable situations. Architects came from the capital to plan an expansion that would include temporary shelters, a vocational school, and a training program for women who wanted to restart their lives. "You want to transform our home into a social project?" Emma had asked when he presented the idea. "I want to transform our home into a place where other people can find the same refuge that I found here with you. Our home." She repeated the words, savoring the sound. "Our home, our family, our life." He held her hands. "Emma, I know we're just beginning to really know each other. I know everything happened very quickly and in extreme circumstances. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life discovering who you are, day by day." Victor rose from his chair, the wounds had healed well, and knelt in front of her. From his pocket, he took out a small velvet box. "Emma Sullivan. Yes, I've already chosen your last name. Will you marry me?" The ring was simple and elegant, a solitaire that softly shone in the evening light coming through the inn's window. But it wasn't the beauty of the jewel that made Emma start to cry. It was the absolute certainty that this man, this child, this life they were building together was exactly what she had dreamed of during all those years of solitude. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." Ryan, who had watched everything from the kitchen door, ran to join the embrace. "Now we're a real family?" he asked. "We always have been," Victor answered, "since the first night." 6 months later, the main church of Pine Valley was packed for Emma and Victor's wedding. Half of those present were local residents, including Mrs. Connie, who cried copiously throughout the entire ceremony, and the other half were women and children who had been helped by the inn project. Ryan was the ring-bearer, carrying the rings with absolute seriousness. In the first row sat Julia, Caroline's girlfriend who had become part of the family and helped administer the social project, and some of the federal agents who had become friends during the process. When Father Anthony asked if Victor accepted Emma as his wife, the response came clear and strong: "I do, forever." And when the same question was asked of Emma, she looked around the church, at the people who had judged her, at others who had supported her, at the child who was now officially her son, at the man who had transformed her life, and responded, with all the conviction of a woman who had finally found her place in the world: "I do, forever." The kiss that sealed the marriage was accompanied by the applause of an entire town that had learned that true love doesn't respect conventions, doesn't ask permission to happen, and always finds a way to triumph over any obstacle. That night, while the celebration continued in the yard of the transformed inn, Emma and Victor hid for a few minutes in the room where everything had begun. She wore the simple but elegant wedding dress she had chosen, he the dark suit that made his eyes shine even more. "I can't believe we made it," she whispered, resting her head on his chest. "I always knew we would," Victor responded, kissing the top of her head. "From the first night, when you opened the door during the storm, I knew I'd found my home." Outside, Ryan laughed loudly, playing with other children, his laughter mixing with music, conversations, and the happy noise of a celebration that marked not just a wedding, but the beginning of a completely new life for all of them. And in a small town where dreams rarely came true,